Welcome. You're listening to the best of investing on Talk 910. This is the show where we present valuable information about real estate, the financial markets, and other economic business of the day. And for those of you listening for the first time, because we have a lot of new listeners, here's our format. A few guys sitting around a bar having drinks, without the drinks, talking business with you, the audience listening in. I'm your host, Edward Brown, and I'm pleased to have as my co-host Mark Hahn of Pacific Private Money, California's fastest growing private lender, and Rob Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. That's right, we're giving away 9 vacations during this show. Today's trivia theme is movies with colors in the name. You'll understand when we get into that. Our website is Best of Investing.
The color purple.
The color purple. Oh, I should have used that one. That was a good one, especially to match your shirt there. Our website is bestofinvesting.com. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube, and I think iHeartRadio too, if I'm not mistaken.
Indeed. iHeartRadio.
Best of Investing radio show. We're also on television, Comcast channel 26 and AT&T channel 99 on Saturdays at noon and Sundays at 6 p.m. Today we have a special guest, Keith Wyche, who is going to discuss what really goes on in the corner office. Keith, welcome to the Best of Investing.
Glad to be here, guys. Thank you so much.
Hey, Keith, I know you've got a book out. Tell us about the motivation for writing a book about this. I think it's a fascinating topic. I think a lot of people, they look up at the house on the hill and they want to know how people got there. I think this is a similar situation. Tell us about your motivation.
Yeah, my motivation was simply based on the fact that, I struggled a long time to get to what I call the C-suite. And when I got there were a lot of surprises that caught me off guard. I'm a quick study, so I picked up on a lot of those. But I saw a lot of young professionals kind of get those opportunities. And they were kind of one and done. They kind of did a milli vanilli. Got in, blew it, and really had to get pushed back down the career ladder. And so this is just really an effort to say, hey, here's some things you really need to think about before you go after that job. You may think you want it, but the job you get and the one you think you're getting, it can be 2 different jobs.
Right.
So, Keith, the name of your book is Corner Office Rules. Who is the core audience for this book?
There's a core audience of what I would call mid to senior level professionals, those folks who are dying to get to that VP, senior VP role, but also a big part of the audience are MBA students, executive MBA students, folks who are investing in their careers and in themselves to be ready for that. So those are the 2 audiences that really gravitate to the book.
So, Keith, I was going to ask you, now, why are the rules different for the guys at the top?
The number one rule that reading the rule is different is because the role is different. When you're at the top, you have to think about the entire enterprise, the entire organization, just not your own individual goals or your own department's goals. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is, most of your career, you're an individual contributor. You're doing it all yourself. You're doing it your way. But when you get to the top, you can have tens or hundreds of thousands of people reporting to you, and you can't do it all on your own. You have to learn how to work with, through, and around people, leveraging persuasion and influence skills.
And then are there some rules that are more important than others?
Well, I won't say some are more important. I mean, this is the obvious ones, right? Don't do anything stupid. Don't tweet anything that you'll be embarrassed about. But the ones I see people struggle with the most are around the areas of criticism. When you're a leader, you're going to be criticized no matter what you do, no matter what decisions you make. And so you have to get a thick skin and understand that. And the other one I see a lot of people struggle with is just the fact that when you're the boss, you're always under a microscope. And so for some people, it can be tough to have their every action looked at and monitored. And we live in an age of Facebook and Instagram, and so you really have to be careful that someone doesn't catch you at a bad moment.
So were any of these rules that you write about in your book, Keith, that you had to struggle with?
Yeah, I think I struggled with the it's my way or the highway syndrome. When you're successful and your way works, you tend to want to make everyone go your way. But you have to learn as a leader, that there's more than one way to get from here to San Francisco.
So it's like the Maslow thing. If the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to...
It was a hard time letting go of the reins and empowering other people to really give advice and counsel and even make mistakes, to realize there's more than just my way.
What I was going to say, Keith, is I would think when you're the CEO or you're at the top, when you're in the organization, in other places of the organization, you're looking up. But when you're in that position, do you hear footsteps of other people trying to take your job? Does that get you? What happens if the rules we're talking about, what if you don't stick to those? Does it go both ways? You get internal and external pressure on your position?
Well, you get tons of pressure on your position, both internal and external, and there's tons of examples of that. But really, if you're doing your job and doing it to the best of your ability, you don't worry about necessarily footsteps or someone taking your job. You really more wonder about, hey, am I doing the right thing for the business, and
Right.
am I doing the right thing for the people? But history is littered with CEOs who didn't necessarily come in with the right attitude.
And you talk about being lonely at the top. We always hear that, lonely at the top. Well, why is that?
Well, it's not for the reason some people think. The reason it can be lonely at the top is because when you're at the top, you're privy to information that other people either A, don't know or can't be told. So, for example, you're a CEO or senior leader and you know a layoff is coming in 6 months or 90 days. You can't run around and share that information. If you're going to put the company up for sale, you can't run around and talk about that. So things, you know information you can't share.
There's nobody
Another
who
thing
can
I
find
found, particularly today, is that information gets filtered all the way up. And so typically as a senior leader, by the time you get any information, people kind of tell you what you want to hear. And so if you're not careful, you don't really learn the truth. And that's why I tell leaders, spend a lot of time talking to the folks at the rank and file, because that's where you really hear the truth. There's some people that won't tell the emperor he has no clothes.
Yeah, it's like going into a restaurant and, the owner actually wants to hear if there's a complaint. A lot of people say, I just don't want to complain, but that's the only way that they're going to learn, to correct things. So you have a chapter called The Perception Gap Widens. What did you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that, somehow the way you see yourself and the way others see you can be totally different. If you have any amount of emotional intelligence, you're pretty self-aware. But what you don't realize is as a senior leader, people kind of put a Superman cape on you and give you a supernatural power that, maybe you don't really have. Or they may think, well, you're a CEO, you're probably snobbish or arrogant. And so you always have to be in touch with, really what your perception is. And whatever that gap is, try and close it. When I got into the grocery business from Pitney Bowes, I had a perception gap because I walked around with Brooks Brothers suits and those types of things. Well, that worked on Wall Street. Doesn't work in the grocery business.
Yeah.
I had this big perception gap, but here's this, know-it-all guy from the East Coast with his fancy suits. And I literally had to change my approach and my wardrobe to really match the culture.
Yeah, interesting. There's one other thing in here that's intriguing to me. You also talk about getting a life because the company can't love you back. Talk about that. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, one of the things that I think we all fall into, and men more in particular, is that we base who we are on our business card or our title and what we do, right? And so that's great as long as those things are working. But if you lose those things, you lose yourself. And so, someone asked me the other day, what is one of the biggest regrets I have in my career? Well, I don't have a lot of them. I wish when my kids were younger, they're all adults now, I had spent more time with things that are important to them. Because at the end of the day, any company that's worth its salt, they have a succession planning list that says if you hit the lottery today or get hit by a bus tomorrow, we know who's going to fill that seat. But your family and those of your loved ones are really important to you. You have to make time for that.
Absolutely.
Because again, the company's going to at best give you a gold watch and show you the door. Your family's going to be there for you.
So Keith, share with us some of the advice you're giving in your book to someone who wants to be a CEO or one of the top leaders.
The first thing I really challenge people on is give me the why do you want to be that? Because it has to be more than just I want to be the boss or I want the big paycheck or I want the title. It really needs to be because you have a passion about people and helping people develop and be the best that they can be.
Well, it's definitely not going to be because I want to work less hours.
Yeah, right.
That never happens.
Absolutely. In fact, I'll tell you, you'll work more. The other surprise, and I didn't talk about it in great detail, but the higher you go in the organization, the more of your personal life and business life intertwine.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're going to dinners and eating, hotel, chicken and steak dinners at this banquet or that. You really give up a lot of who you are and yourself for the job.
That's true. So, Keith, we're going to be letting you go here really soon. We wanted to...
Not literally, Keith. We don't. You're our boss on it.
Great. Keith Wyche, who wrote a book about the corner office. Very interesting.
Great stuff, Keith.
Very good. Keith, thank you so much for joining us at the Best of Investing.
Guys, thanks so much for having me. Enjoy.
All right.
Happy holidays.
Okay. We are going to cut to our first commercial break. And again, the theme is movies with colors in the name. This 1971 Stanley Kubrick futuristic masterpiece deals with issues of criminal behavior and free will. Hint, think of the word clock. Okay, call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. This 1971 Stanley Kubrick futuristic masterpiece deals with the issues of criminal behavior and free will. Hint, think of the word clock. Don't touch that dial. The Best of Investing will be right back. Well, welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hoff of Pacific Private Money and Rob Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. When we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question again. The theme is movies with colors in the name. This 1971 Stanley Kubrick futuristic masterpiece deals with issues of criminal behavior and free will. Hint, think of the word clock. That's a little too big a hint.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What's the answer?
Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, a Clockwork Orange. You guys ever see that movie?
I did not see it, but I did see Full Metal Jacket, which is also Stanley Kubrick, correct?
Yeah, I didn't
Okay.
like that movie.
It was a little weird.
I didn't think that was good. Platoon was a very good movie.
Yeah,
That
Platoon
one
was very good. You're right about that.
Okay. A couple of emails here we received. For Mark Hanf. If I'm willing to pay, basically, this is effectively what he's asking. If I'm willing to pay you a higher interest rate, can you charge me less points?
The answer is yes. What's nice about private money loans, or hard money loans as they're sometimes called, and that's the type of loans, in fact, that's the only type of loan we originate at Pacific Private Money, are privately funded private money loans, or again, hard money loans. You can use the term interchangeably. But one of the nice things about these types of loans is their flexibility. So in fact, I just recently did 2 loans to the same company on 2 different pieces of property. And on one loan, I charged them a note rate of 10% and then charged them 2.5 origination points, 2.5%.
Okay.
So a point is equal to 1%.
Right.
On the next loan, because they were looking to maximize the amount of cash that they were able to use from the loan, and what I mean by that is when you borrow money from a bank or a private money lender, usually the fees and such are deducted from the loan. So if you're charging points, and if it's a $100,000 loan and you're charging 3 points, he's really only getting $97,000, and then it's even less than that because title and escrow
Right.
will be come out of that. But on the next loan, we charged them a note rate of 12.5%,
Oh.
0 points.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and
So
again,
he's netting more out.
And again, if that sounds like, usurious or predatory in terms of lending, keep in mind that this is a corporation that has a profit model in real estate, and they were happy to pay 10% and 2.5 points for the money. And in this particular transaction where they wanted to maximize the cash they were receiving, they said, "Hey, how about if I pay you 12.5% and 0 points?" And it's a 12-month loan, so it's a short-term financing.
Is there a minimum guarantee of time?
This particular loan, we did a 6-month
that's
guarantee,
fine.
a minimum.
Right.
And what that means, audience, is that we're making them this loan, and they promise to not prepay it in the first 6 months, or if they do, they have
Right.
to make up the difference for 6 months interest. So that particular investor in that note was promised a minimum return on that note rate. So the note rate's 12%, 12.5% annual, but if they only keep it for 6 months, you're
Right.
making half of that, right? But that was the minimum guarantee and that's common.
Yeah.
Although depending on the source of our funds, we also make no prepayment penalty loans as well. So it's possible that you can, negotiate a higher or lower note rate depending on your willingness to pay higher or lower origination fees. Buy down the rate or buy up the rate.
Right.
And you can also negotiate for, or just simply say, hey, I need a no prepayment penalty loan because I think I'm going to flip this property in 3 or 4 months, and we have funding sources for that as well. So.
What were the particulars on that? How much were they borrowing? What was the loan to value?
The loan to value, we rarely go higher than 70% of the purchase price. So we were making them a 70% loan. This particular property was in Southern California. It was a newer home, and this company actually that we were providing the financing for, they specialize in buying homes from people via short sale, people who bought a home at the height of the market, and they've made it their dream home. And yet the
Right.
value is still a fraction of what they
Right.
paid for it. And a lot of these guys used a first and a second. Maybe they put very little money down. They owe way more than it's worth, but they want to keep it. But they really don't want to be chumps and keep paying that interest rate that keeps creeping higher, because a lot of these were adjustable
Right.
loans and such, and neg-am loans and et cetera. And so this particular company that we made these loans to, they specialize in finding people who fit a certain criteria. They bought at the height of the market. They owe way more. They usually have to have at least $100,000 in negative equity. and they're making money now, and they're in the process of doing a strategic foreclosure. So they're looking for a certain type of client that really, and the last but not least, they want to keep the home.
Right.
So
Right.
so
To rent it out.
and they're right, and they're willing to go through the short sale process to have their home purchased by this company called Home Liberty, and Home Liberty will then resell it back to the homeowner at a lower price. And this is all above board. It's done with the bank's blessing. There's nothing illegal or
Nefarious.
unusual, nefarious, right? And
Well,
everyone,
they still have to undergo the foreclosure. So,
right?
Yeah,
That's
they're not skirting that.
The risk is it's not 100% guaranteed that it will work, because if
Right.
an investor swoops in and buys the money at the foreclosure sale and Home Liberty is unable to buy it, then there is a small risk that it won't work. But generally speaking, I think their performance ratio is pretty high, and they've helped save
Interesting.
a lot of homeowners who want to keep their dream home, but again, owe more than it's worth, and they know it's going to be 10 years or maybe even longer before it ever hits
So
that price.
basically, it's really the bank who's going to take it in the shorts, so to speak.
Well,
Right.
for better or worse, for the last 5 years, it's been the banking industry that's taken it in the
Yeah, I
shorts.
mean, I'm not defending them. I'm just saying that, because the homeowner's going to be able to stay there,
Right.
you're going to make money, Liberty's going to make
And
money.
when the banking industry takes it in the
Yeah.
shorts, and the government's, partially guaranteed some of those losses, what does that really mean? It's the taxpayer
Taxpayers,
that's really taking in the shorts. So keep paying those taxes,
Yeah.
and we'll
tax
keep
dollars
short
at
selling
work.
those
But
homes.
the net result, though, from your standpoint, is that you've got a pretty smoking deal on the books, earning 12.5%.
Yeah.
Well, I want to step back on that in just a second, because this is the Best of Investing show. So I think Mark's point speaks to a larger topic, which is the fact that oftentimes we've been conditioned to think the lowest rate is the best, and there are other ways to finance properties where perhaps the lowest rate accomplishes a certain goal, but that's not the most important goal you have. And I think that's what you're getting at when the rate is higher and your net cash out of the deal is greater, and that's what you need more.
In financing today, there's always trade-offs. Look,
Right,
if
exactly.
you want 5% money or 4% money, and you can prove your income, you've got good credit, and you want to wait for the bank, you've got 30 to 45 days. And again, I don't want to, speak on behalf of Robert, who's going to talk about, what's happening in mortgage rates right now,
Right.
which again is pretty exciting. But, if you can either go through conventional or bank financing, and it takes a certain amount of time,
Right.
and you have to jump through a certain number of hoops. It's
Correct.
highly regulated today. Or you could take advantage of the hard money / private money industry that can provide money very quickly. Oftentimes, no questions asked, because we look at a certain number of attributes of the property. And the borrower's attributes aren't nearly as important as the property attributes, and we're only lending usually 70%. So it's just, if you're willing to pay more for it, and usually, again, it's not an issue as much because the borrower is usually a real estate investor. Again, we're not making loans to people in distress at 10% or 12.5%. We're making loans to people who have a business model based on real estate investing, and they need access to leverage, they need access to capital, and they're willing to pay
Right.
9, 10, 11, 12% for the use of that money, usually for short-term purposes.
I was gonna say that,
because
that's
they make a
important.
profit
Right.
with it. They're
Right.
able to, these guys are.
It's money in motion.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm working with real estate investors who are solving for anywhere from a 20 to 30 to 40% annual rate of return, and so they don't mind paying 10% for money when
Right.
they're making double or more than that. So again, it's a business purpose, business decision, and one of the great things about that Pacific Private Money is that we call it private money lending, because guess what? All of the money we use for our loans comes from private individuals, and they get to enjoy a majority of that note rate. So if we're making loans at 9, 10, 11%, we're paying our investors 8, 9, and sometimes even 10%. So our radio show website, thebestofinvesting.com, and you can see all our contact and email information there.
And Mark will explain how you can earn very high interest rates with very
8%
low
or more
risk.
on your money or your self-directed IRA accounts with very low risk, absolutely.
Very nice. Okay, we're going to cut to a second commercial break. When we come back, we have a very interesting email for Rob Spinoza about buying down a loan. And it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say about that. In this 1963 comedy stars Peter Sellers as a bumbling police inspector. The name of the title refers to a rare gem, although it has been come to be associated with the seller's character? Which color is contained in the name of the gem in question? Don't touch that dial. The best of investing. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hahn and Rob Spinoza. Well, when we cut to the second commercial break, we asked this trivia question. This 1963 comedy stars Peter Sellers as a bumbling police inspector. The name in the title refers to a rare gem, although it has come to be associated with Sellers' character. Which color is contained in the name of the gem in question? Rob?
Pink.
Pink, as in the Pink Panther.
All right. I'm on the board.
You're on the board. That's right. Okay. Email we received for you because you are a mortgage broker.
Correct.
Highly intelligent, I might add.
Thank you very much.
And the question comes in. It's a highly intelligent question.
Yep.
What is buying? This is in quotations. Buying down a loan, and do you advise it?
Okay, great question. And buying down a loan in the simplest form, the way that works is somebody pays the bank points. Point is 1% of the loan amount. And they get a lower rate in exchange for that additional cost they would pay at closing. So the question becomes, why would anybody want to pay more money? Well, if you're getting a lower interest rate for that investment, then over time, the savings in your monthly payment would benefit you. So it becomes a time equation. And so when you ask, should I do it? What I'll do with a borrower is I'll walk them through the process. So I'll say, okay, well, if you pay $3,000 or 1% on your $300,000 loan, and that nets you a savings of $50 per month, you will recover your investment in 60 months, in 5 years. Are you going to be in the house that long? That's the first question. If the answer is yes, then you begin to look at the savings after that, because if you refinance that loan or sell that house prior to that 5-year period, you've essentially left that money on the table.
Yeah.
You would have been better off taking the higher rate and not investing that loan up front, or less investing that money up front.
It's funny. It's almost along the lines of
it's the opposite. Exactly.
Of what Mark was
and it's exactly the opposite of that. And it goes to show again that what matters most and what's most important is what matters to you. So I like to use point buy downs in scenarios where a borrower is getting a 15-year fixed loan, and perhaps that's the house they're going to die in, as they say. Because at that point, you're not leaving the house by selling it. And if you believe the market is at the bottom and you're buying the interest rate down as far as it can go, the likelihood of refinancing is virtually off the table.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the hot seat for a minute.
Sure.
You as the broker, do you make more money if somebody buys the loan down?
That's a great question too. The answer is no, because that additional profit that they are paying is going to buy down the next rate on the rate sheet. So you are paying the lender's profit on the basis they would have already gotten. But instead of them getting it from the bank itself, you're paying that profit. So in other words, when you get a home loan these days, I would say if you get a competitive quote from a lender, there's probably 1% of profit in that loan, majority of cases. So for example, a realtor sells a house, there's typically a 3% commission. If you get a mortgage, there's usually a 1% commission in play behind the scenes. Now, if you agree to pay the lender that 1% up front, he can offer you a lower rate on the rate sheet, because he doesn't need to realize as much profit out of the rate. The higher the rates go on the rate sheet, the more money is going to the broker or the bank, either one. And that's how it works. That's how the principle works. Conversely, if you were to say, well, I want to do a quote-unquote no-cost refinance, what happens then is the lender sells you a higher rate, takes that additional profit, and pays your costs.
So I can't get the lowest possible rate and no points, no fees, and you'll still pay my appraisal, right? That's what it sounds like on the radio when I'm listening to these commercials.
Not only that, but he'll also pay your mortgage every month for you. You're a good guy, Rob.
Yeah,
not quite.
No free lunch, I think, right?
There's no free lunch, but it's a great question to have. And if you are thinking about buying an interest rate up or down, those are questions you want to ask your lender. How does it work? And asking them what they get paid is a fair question as well. But it's a sliding scale on the day that you're looking to lock the interest rate. The lower you go on the rate sheet, the more you have to pay, or the less the lender is making per note rate. And the higher you go on the rate sheet, the more the lender has at stake and can pay your closing costs above par.
So speaking of rates, how are mortgage rates this week?
This has been a tough week for mortgage interest rates, and we are seeing things up about an eighth or a quarter from where they started the week. And the result, that is all tied to the fact that the Federal Reserve decided to taper their asset purchases by $10 billion, $5 to mortgage-backed security and $5 to Federal or Reserve notes. So that has investors thinking that the Fed will continue to gradually reduce its position in stimulating the economy, and as a result of that, rates must go up.
So where are we about now for a 30-year,
30-year,
80%?
yeah, 30-year fixed conventional mortgage is in the mid fours, 4.5%, 4.625%. You're going to see a bit of that. No, still very, very competitive. You got to remember.
Historically speaking, that's still a great rate.
Historically speaking, you're 4% under where we've been over the last 40 years. So it's still very attractive in terms of overall perspective.
Yep.
And Rob, but since you're quite the guru of interest rates and mortgages, how do people get a hold of you?
They get a hold of me. Easiest way is to look at the Best of Investing website. My bio's on there. So bestofinvesting.com.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
One of the little articles I wanted to bring up really quickly here, it says a tax break for struggling mortgage borrowers ends January 1st, and that could mean big tax bills and financial hits for their neighbors.
In theory, if they don't extend it,
If
right?
they don't extend it, yeah.
Right.
So, the Mortgage Foreclosure Debt
Relief
Forgiveness
Act.
Act.
Yeah, correct.
Well, could it come up with more words
They can.
on that?
Is there an acronym for that? FRAC?
Something like that. Okay. Yeah, because the law is set to expire at the end of the year. It says that a return of the tax
Right.
could affect many of the 10 million Americans who owe more on their loans than their homes are worth.
Yeah, but I don't see that as being a mortgage thing. I see that as being, okay, what are you going to foreclose sooner rather than later? I mean, that's not your mortgage borrower. It makes it sound like if you get a loan this year, you're saving something. That's not the case.
Or
It's
they say
different.
in a short sale.
Right.
In a short sale,
Right.
if a property with a $400,000 mortgage sells for $250,000, the forgiven debt of
Correct.
$150,000 will be taxed after January 1st.
Right.
So that.
But as a seller of a short sale, you control a certain percentage of the outcome, but not all of it, because the bank has the final say.
Well, forgiveness of debt historically has always been a taxable
Event. Right.
And so it has not been in the last several years, thanks to, as a result of foreclosures, where you end up with debt forgiveness because your house sells for less than you owe on it. The bank writes off that debt, doesn't go after you for it. And so what's at play here is whether or not the government will extend that for yet another year through 2014, where they'll basically say, look, we're not, as the IRS
Right.
will not
Right.
force you to recognize as income that, let's say, $100,000 of forgiven
Well, that's
debt
quite
if you
a-
let your house go to foreclosure or short sale.
I mean, can you imagine the double whammy? You
Right.
get smoked out of your house, then, oh, by the way.
Right.
Now that you have no
owe this.
money and you may have even had to file bankruptcy,
Right.
and you've lost your credit and all this other stuff, we're going to nail you for
That's
this
got to be
tax
the
bill.
motivation for them.
That's horrible.
Yeah, that's really bad. I could see because, I mean, it's one thing if you borrow money to try to make money and you messed up, but this is just you just happen to buy a bigger house than you needed.
Well, and
so you didn't really benefit from it except you lived in a nicer
Or you
house.
just bought it at the wrong time.
We bought it at the wrong
And you
time,
took
thank you.
advantage of high percentage financing. And there was no law
Right.
against, hey, look, if everyone was out there going, hey, we can get you 97% financing on an FHA loan,
Right.
so why wouldn't you take advantage of that?
Because
if
the
you-
government needs your money. Hello.
That's true. We have a deficit to fight, so we're going to fight it by making people who don't have any money be owing the IRS for the next 10
Thank you,
years.
sir. May I have another?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to cut to
Animal
another
House.
commercial break. When we come back, you guys have some very interesting articles.
We
and-
do.
And so I want to cut to a
Stay
quick
tuned.
I want to cut to a quick commercial break here because I think you guys have a lot of good stuff to share with the audience. Okay, the theme is movies with colors in them. Sounds funny. Okay, this psychedelic animated film is based on the Beatles' music, but it takes its name from only one song. What color is the place where they all live? Don't touch that dial. The Best of Investing is going to come right back with some very interesting articles. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hanf and Rob Spinoza. When we get to the third commercial break, we asked this trivia question about movies with colors. This psychedelic animated film is based on the Beatles' music, but it takes its name from only one song. What color is the place where we all live?
Yellow submarine.
That is
All right.
yellow. Very good. Okay, you guys take it away. You got some very interesting articles.
You want to shoot, Mark? Go ahead.
Well, I just some quick numbers here. It's almost the end of the year here, but the November stats came in, and what I find what's interesting is that we're going to have fewer home sales in California in calendar year 2013 than we did in 2012.
That is interesting.
And what's interesting is the website First Tuesday, which is
Educator
educator
Yeah.
for the real estate industry, is quote blaming that on, if you want to use that word, on the fact that in 12 we had a lot of speculator driven. In other words, a lot of real estate investors were out there buying, fixing, and flipping, and as the prices have gone up, that activity has actually slowed as prices have gone up and yields have gotten thinner. So we've actually had less activity. But the numbers, here's some interesting numbers. In November we had 33,000 sales in California. That's still down from a high. That's almost half of the sales that were in 2004. So in 2004, we had 60,000 sales of homes in California, and we're at 33,000. Interestingly enough, this article says that in order for the real estate market to fully recover and quote, and in fact be a normal market, that we would need to average 60,000 unit sales per month over the course of a year for it to be
Yeah.
an average market. So we're very far away from that. And one of the reasons why we're still far is because we still haven't recovered enough in terms of pricing to allow everyone to freely move within the real estate market. That's number one. Number two,
Yeah.
we don't have enough new home construction yet because, again, the numbers don't quite work for that. But maybe most importantly is the income. We still have a jobless rate and a recovery where people's real wages are actually have not been growing in this past decade in terms of where other inflation, the inflationary effect on other pricing, including real estate, is still more expensive today given the amount of income people are earning. So it's really a quandary. This particular article is not predicting increases on average in California in 2014. So it remains to be seen. There's a lot at work there. There's a lot of variables that affect what's going on in real estate right now, and I just find it curious that that at least now it looks like maybe we're not in a bubble.
I'm going to be Ronald Reagan here for a second and say I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Oh,
because because where you're going with this whole thing is on top of that now. So we know we've got to recover that. We acknowledge that real estate is a key and core component in an economic recovery. And here we are poised to go into 2014 where we have a lot of the Dodd-Frank bill going into effect, and many industry people are looking at this and saying this is going to further restrict access to credit. It's going to make things more expensive. I don't know if you guys caught, but recently the FHFA also noted that they would be raising the guarantee fee, the G fee, on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac backed loans. Now, that is a huge percentage of the loans that get done for your primary home buyers. You know, your first-time home buyers, your move-up buyers, your conforming buyers. They're all, they all fall under FHFA, and they're going to increase those fees. And the reason they're going to do that is to try and promote private mortgage investment into the market and take the government-backed stuff out, gradually. But what they've also done through Dodd-Frank is they've basically made it very difficult for the private mortgage investors to enjoy the same foreclosure defense as QMs, qualified mortgages, which are essentially Fannie and Freddie loans. So again, you have the government going in two different directions at once, and you have the housing market, which industry stat upon stat tells us needs to be in a certain place to promote economic health and growth and job wage increases and employment increases, and yet our Congress people are working against us in that regard, implementing a lot of this regulation going into 2014.
Congress going against us? No. I remember you're from the government. You're here to help.
Yeah, that's right. And I think he said that's the worst thing you could possibly hear.
No, what you're talking about we refer to it in the industry as the QM, and that
Right.
stands for qualifying mortgage. And audience, all that really means is that what this new layer of regulation that was created as a result of the Dodd-Frank legislation passed a couple of years ago. This particular new legislation is going into effect January 10th
Correct.
of 2014, and it essentially delineates to the banking industry, to the lending industry, the types of loans you can make and under what conditions you can make these loans,
Right.
and the underwriting guidelines that must be adhered to so that the banks don't make loans to people that can't afford them.
Right.
And that all sounds like in the public service and for the public good, but the challenge with that is that especially in California and particularly in the Bay Area where you have a lot of self-employed people with sporadic income, this
Makes
is
it
going
hard.
to, it's going to,
Yeah.
the belief is that the qualified mortgage lending guidelines and new rules that go into effect January 10th are really effectively going to result in fewer home loans,
Right.
fewer buyers qualifying, and a more difficult borrowing environment.
And if you're a buyer or a seller, I mean, the thing I hear myself saying to my realtor partners and my borrowers is I don't want to be doom and gloom and pessimistic about it, but you guys have got to understand that if you're playing in the borrowing arena in 2014, you plan to buy a home, you've got to study the tape. You are the visitor going into the home field advantage of the lending industry, and you've got to know what the playbook is. You've got to know how they're going to work and how they're going to treat you, and what to expect if you expect to have a positive outcome. And to Mark's point too, I'm looking at an article right now. Analysis by Goldman Sachs says that if the QM rules had been in place back during the boom years 2005, 2006, 47, it might have prevented 47% of the foreclosures that happened.
Wow.
That sounds great, right? But what it also says is, had the rule been in effect then, about 25% of the loans that didn't default would have also been prevented from getting a loan. So if you think that in the time since, okay,
So a lot of people would have been. So a lot of people who are living in homes
Right now
that they
that-
purchased and they're not in default, they wouldn't have been able to qualify to buy them.
that's correct, and you have to interpret these stats like I do, where you say, okay, well, if 47% of the people, that foreclosed, we haven't been making those kinds of loans for 5 years. So you have to look at the environment now and say, if you want to hold this to be true, we are now 50% down from this, and you're taking 25% of that remaining 53%, and that actually equals to almost half.
Okay, now my head's spinning a little bit.
Sorry about that. All I'm saying is that we really have to see how this thing's going to play out, because I think the restrictions that the government's going to impose on lending that has already become very, very not restrictive, but it's such high quality. The borrowers we work with now, they have to document everything. They have to have their credit scores in a certain place, and the rules will go on top of them. And I think that's problematic.
We haven't had easy money in 5
Right,
years,
right.
and 5 years later, the horses have long gone,
the
the
barn,
weeds
and
are
you're
growing,
like,
the
right.
barn's falling apart, and now they're going to pass
Great analogy.
a
Yeah.
new slew of laws to make it even harder to make bank loans.
So as buyer and seller, you have to understand this. And
Yeah.
if you're working with your real estate agent, your mortgage professional, be aware that these changes are coming, and position yourself to succeed, even though they will be in place.
So I don't see a real estate bubble happening
I agree with
in
that.
2014 or 15 as a result of this. And that part is good news. I don't want
agree.
to see a real estate bubble anytime soon. But I do like the idea of a healthy real estate market with gradually increasing or appreciating real estate values. And I have no idea whether this lays the foundation for that.
Right.
Okay, we're gonna have to kind of. Here's our thoughts for the day. To me, a balanced diet is a cookie in each hand. And a wise man once said, "Man is truly married." Excuse me. No man is truly married until he understands every word his wife is not saying. I thought that was really true. Okay, tune in next week to. I mean, you've been married as long as I have. Tune in next week to the Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away 9 more free vacations for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening, and have a very Merry Christmas
Merry
out
Christmas.
there.
Happy holidays,
On
everybody.
behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long. Welcome, you're listening to The Best of Investing on Talk 910, the show where we present valuable information about real estate, the financial markets, and other economic business of the day. And for those of you listening for the first time, believe it or not, we have a lot of new listeners. Few people sitting around a bar, having drinks without the drinks, talking business with you, the audience listening in. I'm your host, Edward Brown. I'm pleased to have as my co-host Mark Hunt of Pacific Private Money, California's fastest growing private lender, Catherine Harris, CPA of Karate and Karate. We gotta elevate the education of here. So we have a CPA as one of our co-hosts. And Robert Schiff of RPM Mortgage. You got it. We're giving away 9 vacations during this show. Now, the vacations are not sponsored by the radio station. And today's trivia theme is the movie A Christmas Story. Do you remember that from 1983?
Very appropriate.
Oh,
Yes.
of course, because we're coming into.
And every year thereafter.
Yeah, that's right. You've got that crystal ball. What does it tell us?
Oh, and more. And I would love to get your gentleman's opinion on what you think will happen in 2014. But looking back in 2013 and what we know will be coming up in 2014, there is the new laws that have an impact on the mortgages. And how it's going to be, they've said that there's going to be more requirements. It's going to be harder to get approved for a loan. The process will take longer.
That's good. That's actually good for Mark.
For hard money guys.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's one aspect. There is the Federal Reserve. They talk about for the last 8 months, they just tease everybody with their discussions about quantum easing and whether they're going to ease their policy or not.
Did you say quantum easing?
He did,
Is that like
yes.
some kind of physics that I don't know?
It's even beyond me.
Quantitatively so.
Quantitative.
Quantitatively
I don't know. I kind of like quantum.
Yeah, I
Oh,
like
there we
quantum.
go. Quantitative.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
That's okay.
Quantitative.
It works.
It
is a Monday.
It works for me.
Yeah.
It's quantum hardening.
Yeah. The
Yes.
QE.
It is a Saturday.
Too much
and-
wine at Thanksgiving.
QE2.
We all had a hard Thanksgiving, I guess. So
Yes.
that's okay.
Yes.
Thank
But
you.
go ahead.
With the cider, the hard cider.
And my notes only say QE. I got
I
too
don't know.
tired.
Yeah, well, it's the tryptophan. It's still.
So there's that
A
aspect.
trip to where?
No, go ahead. The turkey, yes.
There's that aspect, and that has been an impact and has had an impact, I believe, on the economy and just the decisions that Americans have been making. We just talked about Walmart, and sales are down. People are holding off on purchase. Are they holding off on purchase because of this uncertainty? So in addition to just the Federal Reserve, then there's just the federal government and their budget, and it seems like every 3 months or so there is a budget deal that must be decided and always gets down to the last minute, and the last time was in October when they went after the last minute in that decision. So I'm kind of curious to
That'll
see.
start the year.
So what you're
Coming
saying
in
is
Exactly.
January.
So what you're saying is there's a lot of variables at play here that can affect what happens to the stock market, the real estate market, interest rates, the economic growth, GDP.
Exactly.
In the midst of all this uncertainty, the stock market is reaching its highest levels ever.
Yes.
Right, so are we in a bubble? Those are the new articles. So we've got
That's-
articles
Well,
this
the-
quarter about the real estate bubble and the stock market bubble now, and which I don't know that I believe either of those cases.
I don't think there's effervescence there as much as some people say. I mean, the stock market is at the highest, but the price to earnings ratios are not at the highest they've ever been. They're certainly higher than normal, but within an acceptable range. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. But going back to these predictions for just a minute. Okay, so with
She didn't actually predict anything.
No, I'm
I
sorry.
didn't.
No,
I know. I'm more.
She said there's a lot of variables out there that are going to
That's
impact
true.
what
Yeah,
happens
that
next
is
year. So
correct.
something's going to happen next year.
Exactly.
Okay,
So-
I'm gonna be a total
Then-
CK.
then
It
the
depends.
It depends.
So
Yeah.
uncertain.
Okay. So hold on now. So these new rules are going to be good for you, Mark, in the hard money loan business.
Well, the new mortgage.
The mortgage.
The
Yeah, what
new
they-
mortgage rules, people
qualifying mortgage.
already are worried
It's-
because they're already in
It's going
effect.
to be
actually.
good for you, Catherine,
facto,
because being
yes.
a CPA,
Yes.
people are going to come to you saying, Catherine, help. I have no idea what's going on.
Explain the
Explain.
healthcare law and what does this mean to me?
Or-
Everything.
Or as Ricky used to
You
say,
did read it, didn't you?
explain this to me,
Oh.
Lucy.
Explain it.
Okay, and will this be good for you, Robert?
Well, will it be good for me? If I can explain to people when they come to me and say, what's going on, I'm not understanding it, like some people did today, that's good. People are wanting some clarification and they're uncertain as to what they can qualify for, and I can certainly help assist them and try to clarify things for them. It's not that much different than it's been, although in the last 5 years it's been different and changing
It's been
all
a
the
wild
time
ride.
in the
Yes.
same direction. Always more difficult for people to qualify for a loan.
Always. Okay, we're going to get into a lot of that a little bit later on. We're going to cut to our first commercial break and answer this question. What was the weird prize Ralph's father so proudly displayed? And he did it right in the window. for all of the neighbors to see, much to the dismay of Ralph's mother. One more time, 888-912-1190. Make sure to include your name, your email address, speak slowly, spell out your email one letter at a time. Don't touch that back, don't touch that back, don't touch that dial, because when the best of investing comes right back, we've got an interesting article here about free speech and how free it ain't. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my co-host, famous Mark Hunt of Pacific Private Money, famous Catherine Harris, CPA, Karate and Karate, and famous Robert Schiff of RPM Morgan. When we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question. Again, the theme is the movie A Christmas Story, which it plays like 24 hours a day, right around Christmas time. At some point, I just gotta start doing stuff on TV. I have to change the channel. Okay, what was the weird prize Ralph's father so proudly displayed in the window for all of the neighbors to see, much to the dismay of Ralph's mother? Catherine.
It was fragile.
Fragile.
Because it's from Italy, right? It was a lamp, a lady's leg lamp.
That's right, a leg lamp.
It.
Very good, very good. Okay.
Leg of lamp.
Yeah.
Very good, Mark. He's such a funny guy. Okay, so I'm looking at this this article has been around for a little while, but I thought it was kind of interesting. It was talking about some company where this lady decided, because she ordered stuff and it didn't come, she couldn't get her money back. I mean, there's just one complaint after another. She decided to write on one of those websites about,
like a Yelp
bad
type
review.
thing.
Type.
Yes.
I think it literally was
Oh, okay.
Yelp. And so she is now being sued for giving her opinion, which was fact, by this company, because they say that she should have read the fine print when she clicked the I want to purchase, and it says that in an effort to be fair and honest, blah blah blah, preventing libelous, thank you, content, your acceptance of the sales contract prohibits you from taking any action that negatively impacts this company, its reputation, product, services, employees.
You give up your First Amendment. You give up your First Amendment rights.
So that's the EULA, that they are similar to that when you buy software. That agreement you're not supposed to. EULA, EA,
Whatever.
Yeah.
It sounds like Ebola.
Ebola, no, not Ebola.
And it says here that should you violate this, that you provided a 72-hour opportunity to retract it. Otherwise, we're gonna bill you for $3,500 in legal fees and court costs. And they have done it. They've actually. I'm thinking.
Were they successful?
Well, don't know yet.
So then she could retract it.
Wait, let me
and
back
then
up.
go on the Yelp and say, I had to retract the following statement to avoid.
That's actually what she probably should have done. That would have been good advice. She ignored it. So they went ahead and they are suing her. They hit her credit report. She's trying to refinance, and her credit score is down.
God.
And they're saying you got to pay this off before we'll go ahead and do it. So
That's really interesting. I don't know how I feel about that, because I do sympathize with a lot of the businesses out there that have suffered from, crazy people who've done negative Yelp reviews that are unwarranted.
well, they're blackmailing them. I've heard of restaurants that are saying someone said I will put in a bunch of negative reviews unless you give me a $100 certificate to your restaurants.
This is the way to battle back.
Is that why
Interesting.
when you go to restaurants, all the waiters have recorders hidden?
Yeah, they should. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump into a little email time here. Catherine, an email we received for you says, how important is life insurance? And why are they asking you this question, being a CPA?
Well, I think it's when you visit with a CPA, we don't look at just a tax return. We go beyond that, past the tax return, and look at some of your investments and look at the entire picture of where you are in your life, and make sure that you are as complete as you should be given where you are in your life. When you're in your 20s, or if you have children, or if you're in your 50s, what you need and the type of investments and what you need to have in your financial planning and to be financially healthy changes. And I think we're the first step. We're like your primary doctor before you go to see a specialist, is at least kind of say, hey, that you've got an investment here, you've got other investments that may not be giving you the best results. And the most important, one thing that's very important, some people don't realize some of the basic things that they need to have, is life insurance.
Okay, so you guys don't sell the life insurance, but you'll maybe look over their portfolio to make sure, let's say, that they have it, or that sort of thing?
Definitely, or just it's one of those questions when I'm sitting down with a new client is if I see that you have young children, I will ask about life insurance, or if you are somebody who is the sole proprietor. See, I'm living all day today. If you are the sole provider of income into your home and you have somebody who depends on you, you need to have life insurance. And people oftentimes don't think about that. They also may not think about long-term disability and other insurances that you need in the future should something not good happen. Trying to make it as nice as possible.
So when people come to you to
unexpected.
get your advice as an accountant, you're actually performing a service more like a financial planner, not just
Well, kind of a well-rounded,
More
a lot of financial planners
we
don't know
won't go
about
to that
taxes, yeah.
extent, but we will, when we see something wrong or something that is the obvious, we'll bring it to your attention. We don't just stop and just hand you a tax return.
But, you know,
We will
that's
then
really,
give you an advice and recommendations of who you should see.
you know, that's really good because a lot of times accountants are just going to do what they're instructed. You know, do my tax return or provide a financial statement for the bank. But it's kind of nice that you're sort of taking the initiative and asking them ahead of time for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
must
tell you
make,
from
must make for happy clients also.
Yes.
Yeah. Sure.
I'll tell you from experience, many CPAs, even though they say, they'll be proactive in working with you for planning, really just do the compliance work, and
That's a
that's
good
it.
point.
And you never hear from them, except when they're asking for your tax return information for preparation. And that to me is very disappointing when you can't rely on your CPA to be part of your team to help for planning and strategy.
And I like that, and I wanted to ask, when it comes to life insurance, I did want to direct a question to
Yes.
you, is just what your opinion is about, for somebody who is in their 30s or their 40s who have young children, what would you recommend for life insurance, whether you think more of a term or do you think whole?
Generally speaking, what I found is that if they're healthy and they're nice and young like that, we can get them a dirt cheap policy. I just gave someone a quote who's 28 years old, and the premium I think is locked in at $700 a year for $1 million for 30 years.
Oh, wonderful.
So in 30 years, I mean, a lot of things will change. They'll build up their portfolio. I'm not going to be like one of these typical insurance guys who go, oh no, you can always buy the most expensive. What pays me the highest commission? That's crazy. But that in saying that though, if somebody's got a good amount of money that they need to invest, if it's done correctly, they could potentially get a whole life policy that'll give them a nice tax-free rate of return, provide them the insurance, flexibility, and we generally push it almost to the limit of what the IRS will allow. So, they came up with these things called modified endowment contracts. Basically, it was such a good deal for the investor that the insurance companies came in, the IRS came in and said, wait a minute, this is too good a deal. You can't invest $800,000 in a $1 million policy. That's just, you're getting too much of a tax-free benefit. So if you hear that from the IRS, gee, I guess you should probably try to push it to the limit because that's a good thing. So if it's done correctly, and the only way to do that is to run the numbers and make sure that people know how much it's going to cost. But usually, young family, they can buy a good, cheap term policy from me, of course, Edward Brown, and then they can invest somewhere else.
So
like
when you
Martin-
say term, it doesn't mean just for 1 year.
No, they could buy that, but I don't recommend it. We can get them cheap term for 10, 15, 20, 30, even 35 years. for
And what
that.
that does, that provides a assurance that should something happen and you still have young children, there is going to be tax-free money there if they were to pass away that they could use to buy a house or provide the support that's necessary until those children are usually 18, 25. So that's why you usually go
And
for that
I'll tell
20
you,
to
you don't
30.
think it happens, but my mom, my dad was the sole provider, and my dad died at age 53, and he had a $25,000 policy of which he borrowed 10. So my mom got $15,000. So we
Ouch.
literally had to rent rooms in the house. We could have had not a sitcom, but a reality show of that. So, for like this one guy, $700 a year locked in for 30 years. Now he can cancel at any time. So, he hits the lottery or something, just cancel the policy. But the insurance company cannot change it for 30 years. Can you imagine the peace of mind of just knowing, just don't even have to think about it?
And that's one thing that you just said will never change after the
Yeah.
first year. Nothing.
Nothing.
I don't think anything can be like that except possibly a mortgage.
And let's say in 15 or 20 years from now, he's still paying only $700. Tell you what, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we've got some very interesting questions for both Mark and Robert. Okay, here is our second commercial break trivia question. Again, the theme is the movie A Christmas Story. What was the phrase Ralph's mother and Santa Claus used that discouraged Ralph about trying to discourage him about getting a Red Ryder BB gun? It was a famous phrase that they used throughout the movie. The first three callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. What was the phrase that Ralph's mother and Santa Claus used to try to discourage Ralph about getting a Red Ryder BB gun? Which, by the way, I just bought one myself.
For yourself?
Yeah.
For fun, or
Yeah,
is it for?
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, because sometimes the kids need a little bit of, you can't spank any anymore. So you gotta shoot with the BB gun.
Yes.
There you go.
Just kidding, audience. Okay, make sure to include your name and your email address. Speak slowly, spell out your email one letter at a time. Don't touch that dial. The best of investing will be right back. Here is the trivia question. Again, the theme is the movie A Christmas Story movie. What was the phrase Ralph's mother and Santa Claus used to try to discourage Ralph about getting a Red Ryder BB gun? Mark?
I don't know the answer to that. I said, "I'll be back."
I'll be back. No, that was Arnold from Terminator. Does anyone else know? What was the?
I don't know. Is it the one that'll poke your eye out?
You'll shoot your eye out.
Oh, there you go.
Catherine,
Close enough.
Close enough. That counts. 2 for 2.
Finally.
Finally. There. Okay, we got to cut out here. Here's our thoughts for the day. Rodney Dangerfield said, "I could tell my parents hated me. My bath toys were a toaster and a radio." And Bill Cosby said, "A word to the wise ain't necessary. It's the stupid ones that need the advice." That's words of wisdom there too. Tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away 9 more free vacations for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown. We're wishing you the best of investing. So long.